Hi everybody, I am just jumping back on here because since I've made that video a couple of days ago about me leaving the pro-life movement to join the abolitionists fully, which by the way does not mean that I'm not working for other pro-life ministries. It just means that I'm aligning fully with legal side, legislative side with abolition. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in the work that pro-life ministries are doing. I just may not particularly agree with the way that we write legislation. But these pro-life ministries, they don't work with legislation. They are hands-on helping women, and that's the part that I love, okay? So with that being said, since that video, I've had a couple of people come to me about the statement that I made about some states allowing, like California, some states allowing abortion up to 28 days, and that not being true. I wanted to address those claims because it is true. It's just you're never going to find a single bill that will ever just point blank say abortion is legal up to 28 days after birth. You're never going to find a bill that would just flat out say that. The way that Democrats write bills is they'll write many, many bills on one subject. So they'll have one initial bill stating certain things, certain subjects on reproductive health, but then they're addressing one certain issue. You just have to put the pieces together. They want you to go on a scavenger hunt because obviously they don't want to come right out and say, oh yeah, we're allowing women to kill their babies and doctors to kill women's babies up until 28 days after birth. They're not going to come out and say that straight up. Okay. And if you work on the legislative side of stuff at all, you should know that, especially whenever you're dealing with Democrats. They want you to go on that scavenger hunt. They want to make it difficult. But essentially, they're just signing into laws a bunch of different loopholes. So I want to start by addressing Assembly Bill number 2223, which was approved in September of 2022. In the very first section, I'm going to read it to you kind of like paraphrasing. It says, existing laws requires a county coroner to hold inquests, meaning by law, they have to inquire into, meaning question, and in order to determine the circumstances of a violent, sudden, or unusual death, including deaths related to or following known or suspected self-induced. That's very important to understand here. Self-induced or criminal abortion. Meaning, self-induced, a self-induced abortion is mail order abortion. Meaning the woman orders the abortion pills herself, and then takes them. So existing law requires a county coroner, meaning it's by law a coroner has to question into in order to determine the circumstances and manner of a violent, sudden, or unusual death of a fetus. That is that first sentence. That's what that first sentence means. Then it goes on to say, existing law requires a coroner to register, meaning by law, they have to put it on the certificate, a fetal death after 20 weeks gestation, unless it is the result of a legal abortion. So, meaning by law, they're required to do that. It's important to say that because it means that, yes, by law, if you got an illegal abortion, or got mail order pills for an abortion, that the coroner is not registering that. Meaning they don't want to be able to properly track exactly how many abortions are actually happening because they can't. So, the reason why it's important to understand that the current law for a coroner is to register the death of a fetus after 20 weeks gestation unless it was the result of a legal abortion. It means that if you got an illegal abortion, the coroner had to register that in the system, making it known that it was a criminal offense. Meaning the coroner could use that is evidence of a criminal case. Or moving on to the next sentence in the same section. If a physician was not in attendance, and this whole first paragraph, by the way, is so important for you to understand what they're trying to say, and they wordplay it so much. If a physician was not in attendance at the delivery of the fetus, at this point, we're already talking about a dead fetus. It was stated in the first and the second sentence that we're talking about dead babies, okay? If a physician was not in attendance at the delivery of the fetus, they don't define it, delivery of a dead fetus, Existing law requires the fetal death to be handled as a death without medical attendance. That sentence is very important, and you'll see why. It all comes full circle in that second paragraph. Existing law requires the coroner to state on the certificate of fetal death the time, the direct cause, and the conditions, if any, that gave rise to these causes. Okay, moving on to the second paragraph in the first section. This bill would delete the requirement that a coroner hold inquests, meaning by law, for deaths related to or following known or suspected self-induced or criminal abortions, meaning it is no longer a requirement by law for a coroner to continue to go on a quest to question the reason why baby died due to, because it says related to or following known or suspected self-induced or criminal abortions, meaning if they had that, they are now not required to determine the cause if it's already known or suspected. That this bill would delete the requirement that a coroner hold inquests, meaning it's no longer required by law for a coroner to go ahead and ask the proper questions to determine the death of a fetus if it's known or suspected that the abortion was self-induced or illegal. And it would also delete the requirement that an unattended fetal death can be handled as a death without medical assistance. They're talking about mail order abortion pills. That's what this sentence is talking about, is mail order abortion pills. Because it says death without medical attendance. And then the second sentence, that was just the first sentence, real loaded there. Second sentence, the bill would prohibit using the coroner's statements, meaning if a coroner does go on to inquire certain deaths, which states the result was of the death of the fetus was an illegal abortion or mail order abortion pills, the coroner's statements on the certificate of fetal death to establish, bring, or support a criminal prosecution or civil cause of damages against a person who is immune from liability based on their actions or omissions with respect to their pregnancy or actual potential, yada, yada, yada. They make it complicated on purpose. What they are saying here is this bill is going to prohibit. It's not going to matter. A coroner's statement to figure out the death of a fetus, even though it's unusual or criminal and sudden, a coroner's statement doesn't matter, meaning they don't want the data. And it goes on to also say this bill would prohibit using the coroner's statement on the certificate of fetal death, meaning there can't be any criminal prosecution for any woman in any trimester at any stage who has used a mail order abortion pill. So it talks about violent or sudden or unusual deaths. So all of that is included. This is a huge setup. So something else that you really have to understand is this bill is it's an amendment to section 27491 of the government code to amend sections 103005, all these other sections, okay? They make it difficult. They're trying to amend all these different sections because it's going to take you into a deep dive of what they're actually trying to hide and what they're actually trying to do, what they're actually trying to pass as law. And to repeal section, which if they're trying to repeal something, it means that they're trying to get rid of something that's not going to allow a coroner to determine the cause of death of a fetus, even though it was sudden, violent, or unusual. Okay, of the health and safety code relating to reproductive health. Isn't it kind of interesting that this whole bill is actually just addressing the coroner who's just trying to determine the cause of death? Okay, I had to step outside for a second, but it's interesting that this bill is addressing the coroner just trying to determine the cause of death, because the cause of death surrounding abortions is going to determine whether it should be a criminal case or not. So what they're actually doing here, they're setting up this bill to make all abortions legal. So they didn't directly ever handle it. They said, coroner, you're not allowed to determine the cause of death. And if you do, your statement won't matter anyway. That's how they made it legal. That's why I'm saying you're never going to find a bill that's going to directly make it illegal or directly make, something legal. like abortion. They're going to find something else to target and say, you're not allowed to do your job, you're not allowed to determine the cause of death in these cases. And if you do, your statement's not even going to matter. It won't hold up in court. It means nothing. They're setting this up to make it legal by saying that, well, the cause of death can't be determined. Do you see? Okay, so moving on to section 2. That was just section 1. This is a kind of a long bill to just like break down, but section 2, it's essentially just stating, it says, existing law, the Reproductive Privacy Act provides that every individual possesses a fundamental right to privacy. So essentially what this is saying is that a coroner's report to register the cause of death is an invasion of privacy. That's exactly what the second section is all about. It is kind of long. And so the third section says this bill would incorporate additional changes to section 12346 of the Health and Safety Code proposed by AB 2091 to be operative only if this bill and AB 2091 are enacted and this bill is enacted last. So this one is essentially just stating that it's going to amend this and this and this bill. It's going to do that to several other amendments, several other bills. And so yeah, it's going to when you break down these bills, you realize that they're just leaving like little bunny trails, because it's hard to pinpoint it. So you have to actually like go and collect all the puzzle pieces to try to put it all together, and they're there. So I'm gonna leave that here. I'm gonna make a few different videos just breaking down AB number 2223, and then videos where the terms like perinatal, which is the highlight word that you need to remember, because that is the term where it's going to essentially incorporate abortion rights under a perinatal period. So stay tuned if you want to break down this bill with me.